Hi, I'm Anya. I'm 25 years old, and I'm sitting here in the United States. What would you do if your parents secretly took out a massive loan in your name? Well, not exactly in your name, but with the explicit expectation that you would be the one paying it back? A $523,000 mortgage for your sister. That's the reality I faced. They presented it as a fait accompli, a done deal with my name conveniently attached to the payment plan. My initial smile was pure shock, masking a storm brewing inside. Get ready, because this story takes some wild turns. Growing up, my sister, let's call her Sarah, was always different. Not necessarily in a bad way, but she seemed to operate on a different wavelength, often making impulsive decisions with little regard for the consequences. While I was the more pragmatic and responsible one, diligently saving and planning for my future, Sarah lived more in the moment, chasing after fleeting passions and often relying on our parents to bail her out of various scrapes. This dynamic, while sometimes frustrating, was something I had come to accept as simply the way things were. Our parents, perhaps out of a desire to see both their children happy, often indulged Sarah's whims, sometimes to my quiet resentment. But I rarely voiced my concerns, chalking it up to parental love. However, things took a dramatic turn when Sarah decided she wanted to start her own business, a trendy boutique selling ethically sourced, handcrafted goods. It was a passion project, something she was incredibly enthusiastic about, and initially I was supportive. Starting a business is tough, and I admired her ambition. Our parents, too, seemed thrilled, showering her with encouragement and praise. What I didn't realize was the extent of their financial involvement. Sarah, never one for detailed planning or budgeting, presented them with a somewhat vague business plan and a hefty financial requirement. Instead of guiding her through the process of securing a traditional business loan, or perhaps suggesting she start smaller, our parents took a different route, a route that would ultimately land me in the middle of a financial nightmare. It all came to a head during what I thought was a casual family dinner. My parents had called me, insisting I come over as they had something important to discuss. Sarah was also there, radiating an almost unsettling level of excitement. As we sat around the dining table, my father cleared his throat and launched into a lengthy explanation about how much they believed in Sarah and her entrepreneurial spirit. He talked about the potential of her business and how they wanted to give her the best possible start. So far, it sounded like a typical parental pep talk. Then came the bombshell. My mother, with a nervous smile, announced that they had decided to help Sarah out financially by taking out a mortgage on their home, a sizable mortgage to the tune of $523,000. My initial reaction was confusion. Their house was almost entirely paid off. They had worked hard for years to achieve that financial security. Why would they take on such a massive debt at this stage of their lives? The answer, or rather the justification that followed, left me speechless. They explained that securing a traditional loan for Sarah's business had proven difficult, and they didn't want her dream to be stifled by bureaucratic hurdles. So they had used the equity in their home to access the funds. While I could understand their desire to help their daughter, the sheer scale of the loan and the lack of any real contingency plan raised immediate red flags in my mind. But the truly shocking part was yet to come. After detailing the financial arrangements, my father looked directly at me, his expression serious. "Anya," he said, "we've thought long and hard about this, and we believe it's your responsibility to help Sarah repay this loan." My jaw dropped. I stared at him, then at my mother, then at Sarah, who was conspicuously silent, avoiding eye contact. "My responsibility?" I finally managed to stammer out. "How is this my responsibility?" My mother jumped in, her tone surprisingly firm. "You're her sister, Anya. Family helps each other. It's your duty to support her, especially when she's trying to build something for herself." The word duty hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt a surge of anger mixed with disbelief. I had worked hard to establish my own financial independence. I had student loans of my own that I was diligently paying off, and I had been saving for a down payment on a place of my own. Now, they were casually suggesting I take on a debt that was more than my annual salary multiplied several times over. "But this is a huge amount of money," I protested, trying to keep my voice level. "Did anyone even consider discussing this with me before you took out this loan? Did anyone think about how this would impact my life?" My parents exchanged a quick glance, and Sarah finally spoke up, her voice soft and almost apologetic. "It's just, we knew you would understand, Anya. You're always so responsible." Her words, intended to be conciliatory, only fueled my frustration. It felt like they had taken my responsible nature for granted, assuming I would simply fall in line with their plan, no matter how unreasonable it was. The ensuing conversation was a blur of heated arguments and tearful pleas. My parents insisted that I had a moral obligation to support my sister. That family came before everything else. They painted a picture of Sarah's potential success and how this loan was an investment in her future, a future that I was now somehow intrinsically tied to financially. I tried to explain my own financial goals and the burden this would place on me, but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. They had made up their minds, and my objections were simply an inconvenience. That night, I went home feeling a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, resentment, and a deep sense of being taken advantage of. I replayed the conversation in my head countless times, trying to understand their logic. How could they possibly think this was a fair or reasonable expectation? Had they considered the strain this would put on our relationship? Did they even care? Over the next few weeks, the pressure intensified. My parents would call regularly, subtly at first, then more directly, inquiring about my plans to start contributing to the mortgage payments. Sarah, too, would occasionally reach out, usually with updates on her business, carefully peppered with mentions of the financial challenges she was facing. It was a coordinated effort, designed to guilt-trip me into accepting their decision. But the more I thought about it, the more resolute I became. I refused to be bullied into taking on such a massive debt that I had no part in incurring. It wasn't about not wanting to help my sister. It was about the principle of the matter. They had made a unilateral decision with significant financial implications for me, and their expectation that I would simply foot the bill was outrageous. So I decided to seek legal advice. I consulted with a lawyer who specialized in family, law, and financial disputes. He listened patiently to my story, his expression growing increasingly concerned as I recounted the details. He explained that while I had no legal obligation to pay the mortgage since I wasn't a signatory to the loan, the situation was complicated by the familial relationship and the emotional pressure I was under. He advised me to clearly and firmly communicate my position to my parents and Sarah and to be prepared for potential conflict. Armed with this legal counsel and a newfound sense of determination, I sat down with my parents again. This time, I was calm but firm. I explained that while I loved my sister, I could not and would not be responsible for repaying a loan that I had no say in taking out. I outlined my own financial obligations and goals and made it clear that I was not in a position to take on such a significant debt. My parents were initially resistant, reiterating their arguments about familial duty and obligation. But this time, I stood my ground. I explained that true support involved communication and mutual respect, not unilateral decisions and financial coercion. I suggested that perhaps they could explore other options for Sarah's business, such as seeking investors or scaling down her initial plans. I even offered to help Sarah with budgeting and financial planning, using the skills I had developed through years of careful saving and management. My firm stance seemed to take them aback. They had clearly expected me to cave under the pressure, as I had perhaps done in the past. This time, however, I was resolute. The conversation was tense and emotionally charged, but I held my ground. Sarah remained largely silent throughout the discussion, her earlier enthusiasm replaced by a sullen resentment. In the weeks that followed, the family dynamic shifted dramatically. My parents were clearly disappointed and hurt by my refusal, and communication became strained. Sarah's boutique eventually opened, but it struggled to gain traction. The pressure of the massive mortgage loomed over them, and the resentment towards me seemed to grow. Then came another unexpected twist. Due to unforeseen circumstances and a series of poor business decisions on Sarah's part, the boutique began to face serious financial difficulties. They were struggling to make the mortgage payments, and the possibility of foreclosure loomed large. My parents, now facing the very real threat of losing their home, turned to me again, this time not with demands, but with desperate pleas for help. The irony was not lost on me. They had taken out this massive loan without my consent, expecting me to shoulder the burden of repayment. And now, when their plan had backfired, they were turning to me to bail them out. It was a difficult situation. Part of me felt a sense of vindication, but another part of me couldn't ignore the distress in my parents' voices. After much soul-searching and careful consideration, I decided to help, but on my own terms. I refused to simply take over the mortgage payments. Instead, I offered to help them explore options for refinancing their loan, potentially at a lower interest rate or with more manageable terms. I also connected them with a financial advisor who could provide them with objective guidance. My decision wasn't about vindication or proving a point. It was about family, albeit on my own terms. I was willing to offer support, but not blind obedience to their ill-conceived plan. It was a long and arduous process, involving numerous meetings, phone calls, and negotiations. But eventually, we were able to find a solution that helped alleviate some of the financial pressure on my parents. The entire experience was a harsh but ultimately valuable lesson in family dynamics, financial responsibility, and the importance of setting boundaries. It strained my relationship with my parents and sister, but it also forced us to confront some long-standing patterns of behavior. While the scars of this ordeal may never fully disappear, I learned the importance of standing up for myself and not allowing others to dictate my financial future. And as for Sarah's boutique, it eventually closed its doors, a costly reminder of the importance of careful planning and realistic expectations. Looking back, that forced smile I wore when my parents told me about the mortgage was a mask for a maelstrom of emotions. It was the beginning of a journey that taught me a lot about myself and my family. It was a journey that ultimately led me to create this video, not out of bitterness or a desire for revenge, but to share my story and hopefully help others who might be facing similar situations. Remember, family support should be a two-way street built on respect and open communication, not on unilateral decisions and a sense of misplaced duty. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more real-life revenge tales, hit that subscribe button right here. And check out this other video for another dose of drama.